Hi there, this is Lance King. This is my website. Here is the web address on which you'll find many free resources for ATL. This is my email address. You're welcome to send me any questions after the presentation. This is my Twitter address down here, and below is my Facebook page where I put other resources for teachers that are not directly ATL linked. If you go to my website, it looks like this. In the top right hand corner is the ATL tab. You click on that, you bring up this page here. You'll see up here there are many papers written by myself and other people around the subject of ATL implementation, and at the bottom there are many links to websites giving resources for teachers in all aspects of ATL. I think the first question that needs to be considered is, what is the purpose of ATL? And to me there is one overall purpose of ATL, which is simply to help all students to learn more effectively and more efficiently. Basically, ATL is taking the skills of the best student in any school and teaching all those skills to every student. So then any differences in performance are no longer related to a lack of skills. They may be related to other aspects, but at least we've eliminated skill differences between students. Of course, if all students had brilliant learning and thinking skills, then teaching would become easier, would become more effective, would become more efficient, with a lot less reteaching and the ability of teachers to explore different areas of every subject. And of course, the third aspect is that in the 21st century, we are in a world of uncertainty. The skills that are going to advantage students when they become out of school and they're in the employment market and they're trying to seek jobs or change jobs, the skills that are going to give them an advantage in their life are what are called 21st century skills, which is really just another name for ATL skills. And if you wanted to sum them all up, you could say that they are essentially the skills of the self-regulated learner. A person who can learn from any person, in any place, at any time, using any media. That is the person who's going to be able to take advantage of any situation they end up in. And this is going to be significantly more important the more we move into the 21st century. It's been predicted that students in high school today will have 10 to 14 different jobs by their late 30s. This is not small changes in employment. These are major changes in focus, in subject, in occupation, in exactly what people do on a day-to-day basis to earn their income. More changes than have ever before happened. Also, it's been predicted that 65% of today's grade school students will have jobs that haven't yet been invented. And this provides the challenge for all schools internationally, is how do you prepare children well for jobs that haven't yet been invented? And the other challenge, of course, is the fact that unemployment, youth unemployment between 15 and 24-year-olds, that unemployment internationally is at the moment at record high levels and is increasing. So that even though there's a plethora of jobs available and new jobs, it is only some students who are going to be able to take those jobs. And it is the students with the full range of 21st century skills who are going to have an advantage in employment in the future. If we look at the changing nature of work, you'll see that manual work, both routine and non-routine, have declined over the last 40 years, along with routine cognitive work, where a person is thinking in their work. That is what they're being valued for, but the thinking is pretty much the same day to day. The problems they solve are pretty much the same. And you'll see that non-routine interpersonal and non-routine analytical tasks have been the big increases. Now, non-routine thinking and non-routine tasks require adaptability, flexibility, communication, collaboration, research, all the skills that are in our ATL framework. Here is a quote from Andreas Schleicher of PISA, the International Student Assessment System. It says the world economy no longer rewards people just for what they know, The world economy rewards people for what they can do with what they know. This is talking about skills, the skills of processing information, not knowing things so much as being able to find the right information, validate it, verify it, compare it, contrast it, and work with it. If we look at what top corporate recruiters are looking for in the United States as one example, these are the 7 skill areas that they're looking for. Communication skills, thinking, problem solving, professionalism, collaboration, teamwork, IT skills, and leadership. And in this particular survey, knowledge of mathematics came 14th on the list, just ahead of science, knowledge, and foreign language comprehension. But it didn't mean that these areas were unimportant. It just meant that once a person has got a good subject base, it is then the skills up here that become the skills that pick out the person for the top job. Of course, the IB has incorporated all this into the ATL framework. If we look at the learner profile, if you take all those characteristics together, they pretty much define the self-regulated, self-managed learner. And if we take the skills required to produce those characteristics, that's what creates the essential ATL skill framework. At the 5 skill category level, and now at the 10 skill cluster level within the MYP. And those 10 skill clusters are then further broken down into 134 individual skill practices. If you want to access a framework for this, on my website, you're welcome to take a copy of this. It is an Excel file which defines all of the 134 individual skill practices, and as an Excel file you can add to it and modify it and do with it what you wish. So feel free to look at that. I guess in thinking about how to design and implement a program of ATL skills, the challenge for teachers is, of course, always in designing their teaching program, is to incorporate the knowledge that students need with the skills that students need, with the attitudes, dispositions, and mindsets that will help a child to be successful. And I've been running workshops in ATL for 3 or 4 years now, and it seems to me that many teachers design their teaching program in a certain sequence. It seems many teachers start with thinking about their subject matter. What do I need to teach? Defined as outcomes, concepts, themes, ideas. So they first consider that, and then they consider how will they teach that. And some of that is dependent on the resources available, textbooks, subject guides, internet resources. And then they're thinking about what's going to happen in the classroom. Can we get a sequence of questions organized? What are the activities, exercises, real world examples? How can I put the subject matter together in such a way that the activities encourage student engagement? And then thirdly, I often find teachers finally start thinking about what are the thinking and learning skills that are going to be exercised in the teaching and learning of this material. And this is the point at which ATL skills are considered as the third level of planning. The unfortunate thing about this is that ATL becomes very haphazard and is not designed as a coherent program. My suggestion is to start by thinking about what are the thinking and learning skills, attitudes and dispositions that you want all of your students to have developed by the time they leave your school. Think about that grade 12 student. What are the challenges they are moving on to after school? And what are the skills they're going to need to handle those challenges? And then think about the development of those skills right throughout a child's life at school. So to me, task 1 is to decide on your school's top 10 cognitive, affective and metacognitive ATL skills and make an overall plan for their development from grade 1 to 12. There's nothing magic about the number 10. I'm just trying to suggest that people don't need to engage with 134 ATL skill practices, they could just start with 10, the 10 most important. And then individual teachers are going to then be able to think, what particular ATL skills will they focus on with each of their student groups? So possibly task 2 in planning groups, whether your planning groups are organised by subject, topic, grade level, or maybe even just individually. Individual teachers then have to decide which of the top 10 skills will be taught, reinforced, or practiced within their teaching. Then they start to think about how they're going to get students to specifically and deliberately practice each of these ATL skills within their normal teaching. And this is the point at which teachers need to find or create generic exercises for the practice of each of their top ATL skills and incorporate those exercises at that point into their unit and lesson plans. To aim, I suggest, for the deliberate practice of only one ATL skill per lesson. One skill per lesson, one exercise in each lesson that practices one of the key skills decided upon in your school, for your students, in your particular country and cultural context. The important things to keep in mind, of course, are that there are 2 major groups of ATL skills. There are the core generic ATL skills. These are the skills needed by every student in every subject. They need to get to class on time, they need to listen, they need to possibly make notes, they need to summarize key points, they need to communicate with their people in their group, they need to collaborate. What are the essential skills that every student needs? And then what are the subject-specific skills? What are the skills that define someone as a good learner in mathematics, that define someone as a good learner in design, as a good learner in geography? What are the specific skills that enable someone to have success within subjects? Within each group, there are, of course, 3 different types of skills. There are the cognitive skills, the simple skills like note making, listening, time management, summarizing, critical thinking. Relatively easy to teach, relatively easy to prescribe and get across to students in every subject. There are also the affective skills, things like self-motivation, perseverance, resilience. These are the skills which are different in their teaching application. I tend to suggest a thematic approach for affective skills, but they still can be developed in every student. And lastly, we have what are called the metacognitive skills. This is essentially the skill of getting students to notice the skills, strategies and techniques they use at present and continually try and improve the effectiveness of their own learning. And we've also got to consider structural approaches to teaching ATL skills. 2 possible aspects. One is explicit teaching, which means teaching ATL skills outside of subject-based lessons. In other words, creating lessons to specifically teach ATL skills, whether within the timetable or outside the timetable, as online resources or as an out-of-school program, specifically focused on individual ATL skills. And the other method is implicit teaching, which means embedding the teaching of the skills within the subject-focused lesson. They have advantages and disadvantages for each, but I suggest a mixture of the 2. There are some skills that can be taught explicitly, and there are other skills which lend themselves more to be embedded within subjects. And then the last thing is to consider how to teach these skills. If you're interested, I have recently completed a book for students which contains exercises in all the 134 individual ATL skill practices. They've all been turned into generic exercises that any teacher can use in any subject area. And so this is a book designed for MYP students. If they all had a copy of this book, it would last them for all the years of the MYP, and teachers could then pick out the exercises out of the book to get students to practice those ATL skills in any subject area. Simple exercises like, here's a note making exercise, which is just a simple exercise which gets students to practice 4 different ways of making notes, which can be used in any subject area on any subject material. They evaluate, they review, they work out what is their best note making method, and they then get to practice that method. If you're interested, you can access a sample copy of this on my website, and you can also see a simple page which I've called The Easy Way to Design Your Own ATL Skills Program using this resource. So I guess to sum up, how do you develop self-regulated learners? Well, I think first you've got to teach them all the ATL skills they need to be an effective self-regulated learner. Then you've got to give them many opportunities to practice self-regulated learning in the classroom, managing their own resources, designing their own questions, doing their own research, coming up with their own material, getting feedback on the effectiveness of their self-regulation, and learning how to do it better. And of course, lastly, make self-regulated learning the highest value performance. Celebrate extravagantly. If the student who is the best self-regulated learner gets the highest praise in a school, that raises that to a high level of aspiration for all students. So thank you and goodbye.